Hello, everybody, and happy Hanukkah. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you're enjoying yourself. And during this festival of joy, the festival of lights, you are feeling the joy and the light of Christ within your souls. Today is the 7th day of Hanukkah. We're almost there. There's just one more day, and then we'll have a full Hanukkah. It's really exciting. So I want to just tell a little story. And this is the classic story that we think about when we think about Hanukkah. It is the story of the miracle of the oil. But first, what did Jesus think about this story? And that's the question. Well, on Hanukkah, in the winter, in Jerusalem, Jesus was walking in the temple, in the portico of Solomon. And so the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." And Jesus answered, "I have told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name testify to me, but you do not believe, because you do not belong to my sheep. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. What my Father has given me is greater than all else, and no one can snatch it out of the Father's hand. The Father and I are one." Jesus is right here giving the Shemesh candle of Hanukkah. It is the main point. It is the one source of all light. It is the light that burned in the temple those 8 days on the original Hanukkah, the second Sukkot. Now, this Shemesh candle, it is, of course, the entire sermon, but the main point of the sermon, the main actionable item for us, is when Jesus says, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me." You see, there are 3 parts there. My sheep hear my voice. I know them. They follow me. That is the call to faith. Now, a lot of people, when they think about faith, they think about a belief. And they think that it's only a belief. But that's not the case. There's Shema. There is hear. When Jesus says, "Hear my voice." So the very first part is you have to pay attention to when God is extending his arm to you, to when Christ is knocking on the door so he can come in and eat with you, to when God is telling you that I want to be your God and you can be my people. That is, his sheep hear his voice. And when they respond to him, he says, "I know them." In John, he says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments. And those that hear my voice and obey me, I will love them. And because I love them, the Father loves them as well." Jesus says, "I know them," in that sense. And the third part, they follow me. And to follow Christ means to behave like Christ. This is all about works, this third part. When you follow him, it means you're acting in obedience. It means that you're examining every action that you have, and you're attempting to align it to Christ and his perfection. Those are the 3 parts of this Shemesh candle, and they are the main elements of the faith. That is, Christ reaches out to you, you respond, and you enter a relationship with him. He enters a relationship with you, and you obey him as your master. because we are his slaves, his servants. Now you may be asking, what does this have to do with the story of Hanukkah, with the miracle of the candles that lasted 8 days? We'll get there in just 1 second. It'll explain itself. So, we know the story of Hanukkah. The Seleucid Empire, Antiochus Epiphanes, he wants to unify his empire under his rule. And so what he does is he creates a policy of assimilation. You assimilate or you die. Now, this, of course, didn't go so well in Judea. Like in all the other Gentile nations, they accepted this without much protest. But in Judea, you had factions. One faction decided that they would accept this because this is the new God, this is the correct God. Obviously, if Antiochus Epiphanes was allowed to even begin this sort of policy, then he's probably worshiping the right God. And then the other faction, the true faction, the righteous faction, said that this is a test. We need to choose between God and man. And we choose God. We choose the God of our fathers, the one that we're in a covenant with, the one that protects us if we obey him, and the one that curses us if we do not obey him, but never to utter destruction, because we are his people into perpetuity. That's the righteous faction within Judea. Naturally, at some point, the Seleucids took over Jerusalem, and in a little town outside of Jerusalem, they asked the local leaders to sacrifice a pig to Zeus. Now, they all denied this request, but then one Jew stood up and he said, "I will do it." So as he was preparing, he got all the implements ready, and he was just about to do it when Mattathias, a priest, rose up, drew a sword, and killed him, and then ran away. This is where the precipice of this division reached its climax. This is where you had to draw a hard line between those who were obedient and righteous and those who were disobedient and wicked. You were either for the Lord or you were against him, and there was no middle ground here. Well, the Seleucids took control of Jerusalem, and they took control of the Temple Mount, and Mattathias and his little band called the Maccabees of guerrilla fighters who were fighting against the oppressive Seleucid regime, although they fought valiantly, they were not able to prevent the next thing that happened, which was the Seleucid Empire was able to desecrate the temple, the center of worship, God's own house. They were able to erect the abomination of desolation, and they were able to desecrate it with pig's blood. Now, this was a tragedy of cosmic proportions, because they desecrated the house of the God of the cosmos. But as the Lord always gives people the ability and gives them the opportunity to do something good for him, he gave this little band of Maccabees, so long as they had faith, he used them to cleanse Israel from wickedness. And eventually, as these Maccabees continually said, They looked at Bible passages and they said, if Gideon could do it, if David could do it, if the band of Israelites could do it, if Moses could do it against Pharaoh, then so can we. And so, with faith, they began to continually push back against the enemy. They heard his voice. That is the voice that was in his word. They knew him, and he knew them. And they followed him and obeyed him. And through this process of faith, they were able to push back the enemy and eventually take back the temple. And then Judas, because Mattathias had died at this point and left this project to his son Judas, he detailed men to fight against those in the citadel until he had cleansed the sanctuary. And he chose blameless priests devoted to the law, and they cleansed the sanctuary and removed the defiled stones to an unclean place. They deliberated what to do about the altar of burnt offering, which had been profaned, and they thought it best to tear it down, so that it would not be a lasting shame to them that the Gentiles had defiled it. So they tore down the altar and stored the stones in a convenient place on the temple hill, until a prophet should come and tell them what to do with them. Then they took unhewn stones, as the law directs, and built a new altar like the former one. They also rebuilt the sanctuary and the interior of the temple, and consecrated the courts. They made new holy vessels, and brought the lampstand and the altar of incense and the table into the temple. Then they offered incense on the altar, and lit the lamps on the lampstand, and these gave light in the temple. They placed the bread on the table and hung up the curtains. Thus they finished all the work they had undertaken. Now this was one of the earliest accounts. A later account recounts a specific miracle that happened. This is found in the Talmud in Shabbat 21b. And it says, when the Greeks entered the sanctuary, they made all of the oil that was in the sanctuary unclean. But when the rule of the Hasmonean house took hold and they conquered them, that is, the Maccabees, they searched but found only a single jar of oil, lying with the seal of the high priest, unbroken. But that jar had enough oil only for a single day, but there was a miracle done with it, and they lit the lamp with it for 8 days. Now you may ask, how long does it take to consecrate new oil? 7 days. It doesn't take very long to consecrate new oil. But the question is, are you going to let the temple lay defiled for 7 days when you have in your power to begin cleansing it? I think that's a dilemma that every single one of us face every day of our lives. Are we holding something higher than God within our souls? Do we put something before Him? Have we erected an abomination of desolation in our hearts? Is it a holiday? Is it an idea? Is it a person? Is it an object? Is it a car? Is it a project? I personally, a couple years ago, went through a cleansing process where I had finally destroyed an idol within my life. This was something that was relatively harmless, but it was one thing that I made and I loved. And one day the thought creeped up in my head, and the thought was, if God wanted you to get rid of this, could you? A nasty little thought, because, of course, intellectually, I said yes. Of course I could. But then I thought, let me put that to the test. And as I was just about, let's say I was a click on my computer away from entirely removing this idol that I had, I just couldn't press that button. And this scared me, because this wasn't anything big. It wasn't like a bad thing, but I couldn't press that button. And so I left. And I couldn't, this haunted me for months. Then I came back and I thought, okay, I'm going to do it this time. And I tried, but I couldn't click that button again. And this happened for a couple of years until finally I just closed my eyes and did it. And I felt good. Now the question that I have to ask is, do we have anything like that in our lives? That we just can't bring ourselves to press that button. It may be something that's not bad at all. But if it came down to it, could you press that button? Now you see, the Maccabees, when they came to the temple, they had a choice. We can wait 7 days. It's perfectly reasonable. It's not bad to wait 7 days. Brew up some more oil, sanctify it, then we can cleanse the temple then. Sounds good. I have a plan. That's a workable plan. It's a smart plan. Let's do it. But these people who had seen the miracle of God firsthand in every action that they took, they were able to beat back armies far superior than theirs. And the reason was because they had faith. So they thought, why should our faith stop now? Let's begin. Let's just do it. Let's cleanse the temple now. We have 1 flask of oil. It's not enough, but let's just do it. And a miracle happened there. So the question is, as we are dedicating ourselves to the Lord today, do you have the time set aside to do it now? Do you have the fortitude, the faith to do it now? Or are you going to do it after this job? Next week? As soon as I have the tools or the money, then I'll do it. I mean, the Lord will provide when He wants me to do it, and so when He provides for me to do it, I'll do it. Or are you going to do it now? This is one of the most important things for us to understand. My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. And so I pray that as we joyfully rededicate ourselves to the Lord during this season, that we don't wait. We rededicate ourselves to the Lord now, and not tomorrow, but now. Chag Sameach, have a happy Hanukkah.